Hello and welcome to the next of our lecture recaps. This is a recap of our lecture on directors and committees. So the first thing that we said was that when directors come on board, they need to have an induction. So this induction for directors will primarily be for the non-executive directors, but executive directors need their induction also. In fact, executive directors will need an induction not only to the board, but they'll need an induction into their role within the executive of the business. So they'll need this for the board primarily to understand the business and the markets it's involved in. So the process will be that we'll have a comprehensive induction process. It will be tailored to specific directors and will make up of written information and presentations. However, we have to be careful that it's not so detailed that it overburdens the directors. It needs to be detailed enough so that they gain an understanding, but not so detailed that they're given too much information to deal with. So it will outline various aspects such as the director's duties and their relationships within the firm, also the company's strategic values and the culture within the entity. It will also outline the board operations, what they're expected to do, and the procedures involved in the organisation. So we looked at all of that in illustration 1. When it comes to the directors, we want to develop those directors on an ongoing basis. So we'll provide them with further information such as the company history so that they understand the business they're getting involved in, who the company advisors are, their legal advisors, accountancy, etc. Major shareholders so that they'll be able to get to know them so that they can have that information provision to those shareholders. And indeed the financial statements, the accounts. So the directors need to understand all of those areas. We'll do that through continuing professional development. This is to ensure that directors refresh their knowledge and skills. We don't just want to bring the board on board, we want to develop that board. We want to make sure that they're aware of changes, so those changes need to be communicated to them. Really, we want to support those directors so that they can provide value to the business on an ongoing basis. There are some legal aspects that we talked about around the directors and committees. First of all, the directors are bound by law and also by the directors' duties. So in the entity itself, the directors will be bound by the Articles of Association. They'll also be bound by any shareholder resolutions, any legal provisions and the decisions that the board makes. This is another example of a fiduciary relationship. So this is where they'll need to act on good faith and they'll need to have that duty of care that they have to the shareholders. So if the directors fail to act accordingly, they may well be removed. So it may be that we have retirement by rotation. So retirement by rotation is where the longest serving director retires at each AGM. So that will be at least every 3 years. So what this means is that there's no vacuum created. So we don't have all of the directors leaving at the one time. We have each resigning on a 3-year cycle. And that means that they get a vote of confidence. So it means also that there will be an orderly replacement of the directors. As I said, if the directors aren't performing their duties, they may be or have their contract terminated. That may come about through the death of the director, through the resignation of the director, if they don't seek re-election, or indeed they become bankrupt. Lastly, if it's through a disciplinary procedure, or perhaps they don't attend the meetings, then they may well have their contract terminated. When it comes to disqualification from being a director, well, that may well occur where there's been wrongful trading, i.e. a business has been trading while insolvent and the directors will be held responsible for that. If they fail to prepare accounts or to lodge those accounts, indeed not keeping records will be a problem for directors and could lead to disqualification. Also, if they fail to file the returns of the business or pay the tax, those are all grounds for disqualification as a director. So we looked at those in illustration 2. Other aspects we need to be aware of when it comes to the directors. First of all, they will have a service contract which outlines the legal terms of their service. The contents of this will be the important dates such as the starting date, the notice period required, as well as the duties that the directors have. The remuneration will be included here as well as the employment details. Lastly, the termination procedures should you wish to terminate the contract. Also, we need to understand that there may be conflicts for the directors, conflict of interest, for example, and a requirement for disclosure of those conflicts. So, for example, there may be a contract that they have elsewhere with the company, an employment contract perhaps, or large property transactions with the business, or indeed loans from or to the business. All of those may be a conflict of interest, and those therefore must be disclosed. When it comes to insider trading, directors cannot do this. It's illegal. So that's the use of inside information that they gain knowledge of within the business for personal gain. And as I said, that is illegal. When it comes to performance of the directors, this must be assessed. So for board and its members, they must be assessed on their performance at least once per year. So we could ask, has the board achieved their targets? Have they had strategic success? Have they done their risk management accurately and appropriately? And how has their crisis management been? That's really for the executive board. When it comes to non-executive directors, we'll assess their performance looking at the chairman's leadership, their communication within the organisation and to the shareholders, the contribution that they give to the various meetings. Have they been effective at probing the strategy, for example? Have they been refreshing their knowledge, and do they have an adequate understanding of the business? Remember that directors' pay is set on the basis of their performance, so we need to evaluate their performance for that purpose. When it comes to nomination, there should be a nomination committee. So there should be an independent committee for nomination of directors, which should be majority non-executive directors. There must be a formal, transparent procedure for this, and the nomination committee will be responsible for reviewing the board composition, so who's on it, also ensuring the diversification of the board, that there is succession planning for directors, and to recommend candidates. So we looked at the nomination committee in illustration 3. That then was a recap of our lecture on directors and committees.